Now you pretty much never ever want to be without a mag float. So this mag float here is probably appropriate for this tank, but I'm a big fan of oversizing the mag float. The bigger ones just seem to get the job done more easily. But once you've got one of these in your fish tank, there is no way you would want to go without it. So buy one of these, no matter what fish tank you've got. They're very good, they're very effective, and they make your life very easy. So definitely have one of those. Now the amount of evaporation that you're going to get in a tank is extraordinary. Now this tank has a float switch in the back, in the sump at the back, and that goes into our reservoir, which is right here. So we need to keep this full of RO water, and then we need to be regularly checking the side to make sure that this is full. Otherwise, eventually, it will evaporate out, and then your sump will go dry, and then you'll start seeing little bubbles getting shot out of the pump, and that's because there's not enough water in the back of the sump. So there's your sump, and in the back there is where the pump is. The pump is with the float switch, and then when the water goes down, the float switch should turn on to let the water drain out of the auto top-up. Now the next thing that we need to make sure we understand how the sump works. Oh no, leave that closed. Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's okay for now. Now, as far as the on-off is concerned, it's safest to only add water to your tank while your pump is off. So your return pump is off, then add water, then you turn your return pump on, and then the water down in the sump goes down and the tank goes up. But you never want to be adding water when your pump is on. Otherwise, if you add water and then there's too much water in the sump and you add more, it'll be okay until you turn your pump off, and then the water from the top wants to go down the bottom and it doesn't fit. So as a rule, just don't fill up your sump unless your pump is off. Because if your pump is off and you fill up your sump, then if you overflow it, then I can't help you. But if you do it with the pump on and you fill it up a bit too much, it's when you turn it off that will overflow. When you're setting the app on one of these lights, any of these LED lights these days come with various preset options, and the preset options are often the best options. So for this aquarium, if you went for, say, a preset option for a mixed reef, then you'd be going pretty well. And then you really want to have the tank looking its best when you're likely to be watching it. So if you went to bed at 10 o'clock and you came home from work at 6 o'clock, for example, then you'd probably want the light to turn on at 10 o'clock and go through its cycle, so you'd get to enjoy the light while it's on the best. Now, by all means, play with your presets, but you probably only want to play with your presets if you really know what you're doing, because you would assume if you've got a good quality light that the people that have built the light probably have a better idea of the presets than you. So we're currently waiting for this aquarium to clear up, considering that we just moved it. Now we've made sure the salinity is on the lower side. At the moment, the salinity in this tank or specific gravity is 0.023. Now that is a very good salinity, particularly if we're worried about the stress of the fish. There are various products that are also a good idea when you move the tank, such as Vogel. So Vogel is an immune system stimulant, so adding a bit of that. And then the next couple of weeks, we really want to be watching the fish, because after a move, we don't want to see flicking and scratching. So if we see a lot of flicking and scratching, then we're going to be worried about white spot. Now this tank has a wonderfully oversized UV sterilizer, and that is going to do a lot to make sure that we don't get white spot. But in saying that, a quarantine tank is a really good idea. So if you ever got a sick fish, you can get it out and treat it in a quarantine tank. But in this case, what I'm going to recommend is getting something like a Ledi 40 here, and then setting that up as a quarantine tank. And then what you'll do is when you're due to get fish, you introduce the fish into the quarantine tank, and you want to have them at a nice low salinity, like 0.020. Then you settle them in there, get them feeding, getting them used to you, and then you slowly raise the salinity. And then after about 4 weeks, once the salinity, temperature, and pH is the same in the quarantine tank as the main tank, then you just catch them out and chuck them in. But it's really, really important that fish never go into higher salinity. Otherwise, your osmoregulation system will work harder and their immune system will fail. So putting fish down in salt level is no problem. Putting fish up in salt level is a real big problem. That's why you don't want to just go to the shop and buy a fish willy-nilly and just chuck it into your tank, because the shop might be running 0.020 or lower, and your tank might be 0.024, 0.025. And then when you introduce the fish, regardless of how you climatize it, it's just too much stress on the fish. It stresses their osmoregulation system, and then you'll find a few days later to a week later they end up with a white spot and you lose your fish. So you never want to put fish into higher salinity, but you also don't want to be adding fish more than once a month. So you want to put the fish in, make sure they're nice and healthy and happy, then wait a full month. If they've been healthy and happy for a full month, you can then add fish. If you're worried about your fish, or you get white spot, or something's happened that you're concerned about, you start your month again. So you absolutely never ever want to put fish into the aquarium if anything has happened within the last month. Oversized UV sterilizer is the best thing you can ever do for your aquarium, but you do want to make sure that you replace the tube inside this UV sterilizer after about a year of use. Now, with these Cade aquariums, they've got a pretty cool power supply center, but it's really important that you make sure that these plugs correspond with the order of the plugs in the back. So it's very easy to plug the plugs into the wrong plugs, and then when you go to switch something on and off, it won't be the right thing getting switched on and off. So when moving an aquarium, products like Easy Life are very good. Easy Life helps to give the water a tight positive charge. So you give it a good shake, then you tip it in the water. You'll find it'll make the water quite cloudy, but it will help to be a flocculant. It'll bond what you don't want in the water, help to keep what you do want in the water, but give the water a nice tight positive charge. So therefore it is less likely that your fish are going to get bacterial infections, also your corals, and it makes the environment less attractive for sort of type negative bacteria and organisms to grow. So it helps to keep your water like really, really crystal clear. It's quite a popular product. Every time that you do a water change, I want you to use a gravel cleaner, which cleans the gravel or the substrate while the tank's being cleaned, while you're doing your water change. And the reason why you tend to do a water change is if your nitrate and phosphate levels are elevating, or you want to be doing water changes enough to make sure your sand is relatively clean. And then it's a good thing for helping accumulants not build up over time. So with a tank like this, if you did about that much water change every 2 to 4 weeks, that'd be pretty normal. Now, the more fish you have, the more important the water changes are. The less your fish you have, the less important the water changes are. Now, the color of your live rock is a really good thing for giving you an indication of how good your water was last month. Now, if you've got nice elevated calcium, carbonate, pH and magnesium levels, then over time you should get this beautiful purple coralline algae that'll grow all over your rocks, and that'll take time to grow. But the fact you've got that growing, the coralline growing, is a really, really good sign. If over time your coralline stops growing and your rock goes back to a white, that will usually mean that these levels are incorrect. On the other hand, if your rock starts going green, then that might mean that your phosphate levels are too high. And once again, your rock is going to be an indication of what your water quality was like. So if you fix your rock now, then in the future, your rock will start, if you fix your water now, in the future, your rock will start to look good.